This one is going to be about weapons, armed combat, and my lack of knowledge in terms of how to actually use weapons. I have some, I would say, decent experience in armed versus unarmed, me being the unarmed person, and some very rudimentary knowledge of using some small bladed weapons myself, but mostly how to not just freeze up whenever I find myself in a situation when something pointy is being pointed at me. But since I'm not going to be riding any Xiangxia or Wuxia, sorry for the butchered pronunciation, but not every single protagonist of every single story can be an unarmed fighter. Not every single situation and opponent allow for that. So maybe even if it is the character's preferred style of combat, there still needs to be some flexibility in terms of armaments and other equipment, which leads to what I've just admitted to, that my knowledge of that does not stem from experience but from reading way too many stories. And contrary to my own experience in unarmed combat, which would theoretically allow me to write a combat scene that I would be happy with as a reader and as the writer. When it comes to weapons and clash of such instruments of war, I am going to have to rely on that negligible amount of experience from my own life so far. Here comes a bit of hypocrisy, since while everything else I need as far away from my own reality as humanly possible in a story that's supposedly happening in a different world, in a fantastical setting. When it comes to fighting scenes, I need them to be realistic. Now, when I say this, I mean realistic in accordance to the rules set up by that setting. And then some criteria that I still consider very important that do unfortunately translate from my own real world training. So when I combine that with my wish to create something original, I suppose that my best chance to fulfill both of these is to create as many weapons as possible as I can from my imagination, including the fighting styles, their relevancy and feasibility of actually being used in actual combat, actual confrontation, without ending up being ridiculous, unbelievable, or downright self destructive to ever be used in any sort of believable scenario, which is definitely going to be a monumental task, but this one is, I think, somewhat possible if I just grit my teeth and, well, use my brain, maybe even do a little bit of research. I think that the hardest part will actually be thinking of a weapon that has yet to appear in any other scenario, any other story, since, well, Dungeons and Dragons exists and that particular setting contains, I think, pretty much every single weapon imaginable. So this is where I'm going to struggle. But then again, as long as I'm not copying something consciously, I can never ever claim to have read everything, to have somehow watched and consumed every single piece of media to know which weapons are going to be original, my own, and which are just going to be derivative. But that obviously also applies to everything within my stories, every single piece of every single part of the world building. So I will just have to live with that. But for now, I am definitely going to focus on the idea that I don't want to be inspired by anything and that I want to draw from my own imagination as much as possible and see where that leads me. And this leads me to what the rapid arrows are up to. Last time someone got himself into a little bit of mess and then needed their help to escape with his face intact. And now it's time for some club activities, with Mirek suggesting that the club will attempt to live the blue life through the month of June, a motion that leaves Speedy baffled, asking if he is supposed to paint himself blue or what, which shows the rest of the club that he is clearly missing some required reading, required in quotation marks, but it is connected to some of the literature that inspires the boys of this world that Mr. Fogler had created to go through certain adventures, and it has ties to those 13 beavers that they have been trying to gather, to catch throughout the story. And this blue life is on a similar basis. There are certain activities throughout the day that if you engage in, you get to metaphorically take a box, paint it blue for every day in that month. You have to keep doing these activities and live the bluest life that you can manage. They include morning exercise, brushing your teeth, cold showers, proper speech, no vulgarities, acting in a polite and decent manner, performing at least one good deed, and then experiencing something enjoyable or entertaining. It is not in any way required to paint every single box blue every day, but strive to get as many as possible, as feasible. And so the boys start the very next day, and we get to see them perform these activities. Redcap doing his morning exercise and getting ready for the other two. Not too happy about it, but the blue box is calling to him. Same with Yarka currently taking his cold shower, complaining about the cold, but still considering it worth it for that one blue box. Yindra helping an old lady carry her bags for that good deed box. Mirek also carrying something, and some boys loitering around are commenting on the fact that he is the leader of the Rapid Arrows and supposedly has never said a single swear word, which some girls passing by acknowledge and admit that they all consider it a quality worth of their admiration. And then we see Speedy, who is doing some painting, not the blue kind, at least not yet, since he is helping Mr. Red paint his fence green so that he can paint a box blue when he comes back home for performing a good deed. So when he's done, he's going through the list of things that he is supposed to do today to get all his boxes, and he's still missing exercise and cold shower. since he had overslept in the morning and was thus too late to take care of these two. And then he needs to experience something enjoyable as well. And then, as if calling to him, he spots some logs propped up against a wall above a dangerously looking, maybe deep puddle of water, and this is where he will be able to tick off two boxes at once. He will climb the log up as an exercise and then slide down as his happy experience of the day, so he gets to it. And after some time, an old man who's been observing this calls out to him in sort of a rhyming but mostly archaic way to inform him that those logs are rotten, and Speedy has been imitating an inchworm going up and down repeatedly. Something terrible could happen to him, which Speedy rebukes slightly that he's doing this for the blue boxes, gets about halfway through the sentence when the log, the one right above the big puddle, finally gives up. He just laments this as an epitome of his entire existence and then lands in the water. It is deep enough to cushion his fall, and he soon realizes, thanks to the temperature of his landing point, that it will also count as cold shower. Now he just needs to refrain from swearing to keep his polite speech box blue, and when he finally gets home, he gets to paint the whole row blue, signifying a very lucky day for him. And this is where I'm going to stop. I will be going back to some of the topics that I have covered before, well, during those intros, like those mentors and teachers, specifying a few things, maybe going on about them from a different direction, and then more rapid arrows.